our democracies. That's the problem.
Yeah.
What you need to do is you need to somehow get cyber intelligence, and the moment there are either hate speech or calls for destruction of America, that needs to be prosecuted. That gives you the license to act, because right now you don't have a license to act.
Right. And of course, here in America, I would prefer, instead of calling it hate speech, is that we call it the speech of insurrection, right? Because, if otherwise we're going to be labeled with hate speech when we speak about Islam. But if you say, look, what is insurrection? Meaning, if you're trying to overthrow our constitutional republic, you're involved in insurrection, that's a criminal offense. You're openly saying you want to overthrow our constitutional republic, our constitutional rule of law. That's criminal. But unfortunately, Congress in the 70s, they were able to bring a lot of pressure to stop the FBI from monitoring communist groups unless they knew they were about to commit a crime. Well, how would you know that unless you're monitoring them? So the communists have infiltrated for so many decades the long march to the institutions and neutered us. And now the red-green axis working together is trying to take us down. But it's many of the same people trying to take you guys down over there. The very same coalition. And now they've built their Mecca agreement. And that's growing. Now they look like they want to add Iran to that Mecca agreement. I think it's just lining up Gog-Magog coalition is what it's really doing. So, I don't have any kind of problem today that the rapture wouldn't solve, Aaron.
Amen. Absolutely, Brandon. Well, we know, like the Lord said, don't be afraid of him that can kill the body, but be afraid of him who can kill the body and the soul.
Amen.
Fear God and fear no one else.
Aaron LaVarco, thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Brennan.
If you guys appreciate what we're doing, we need your support. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Online the last 2 days, we brought in a whopping $300. Whopping $300 brought online the last 2 days. Cannot pay our bills that way, folks. So I know it's summertime, but please, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. So thanks for watching. Take care.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
The only thing that has truly served as an anchor of the United States of America is that we have been, and by the grace of God, we always will be, a Christian nation. Now, I want to be explicit because, of course, the fake news media will twist everything that I say. I'm not saying... Do you feel about them the same way I do? I'm not saying you have to be a Christian to be an American. I'm saying something simpler and truer. Christianity is America's creed. The shared moral language from the Revolution to the Civil War and beyond. Across that history, our country's major debates have always centered on how we could best as a people please God. That creed, think about it. That creed motivated our understanding of natural law and rights, our sense of duty to one's neighbor, the conviction that the strong must protect the weak, and the belief in individual conscience. Even our famously American idea of religious liberty is a Christian concept. Because we're all creatures of God, we must respect each individual's pathway to that God. But over the last 50 years, there has been a singular focus, a war that has been waged on Christians and Christianity in the United States of America. And let me say, of all the wars that Donald Trump has ended, that is the one we're proudest of.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, you just heard Vice President Vance say it plainly. We have been, and by the grace of God, we always will be a Christian nation. Not a theocracy, though. Not a test you have to pass to be an American. A creed. A shared moral language that gave us natural rights, the duty to our neighbors, and the idea that the strong protect the weak. That's the foundation, and it's why this country became a beacon of hope. And it is why the left works so hard to pry the church away from the state and conscience away from the law and the people away from their own constitution and that declaration that we're celebrating this year. If the church stays silent, somebody else will write the rules. That is not theory. That's what we have watched for years. Mandates, speech codes, open borders dressed up as compassion, creeping Sharia law inside our country, and global arrangements that make life less affordable for the American people and harder to find good paying work. Today, we're talking about protecting liberty where it actually lives in the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, and the right of a free people to govern themselves. And joining me is Caleb Collier. He's a Marine Corps veteran, a former EMT, former Spokane Valley, Washington councilman, and he has stood against the school vaccine mandate and fought to make his city a Second Amendment sanctuary. He hosts a great show called Church and State, where he tells Christians to get out of the pews and into the civic fight. Caleb, welcome to the program, man. I appreciate you letting me come on your show last week. It was great to meet you and get to talk with you, and I'm happy to have you on, my friend.
Yeah, it's thrilling to be here. As you said, it was great having you on my show. We had a great conversation there, and I'm looking forward to jumping in here and discussing America and how we have to be a Christian country, as well as these natural rights that God gave us, to include the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, and a whole slew of others.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked during your show about wanting to get into some things, but you let me get my message out, so I wanted to be reciprocating and give you the chance to talk about some things that I care about deeply, that I figured out you care about very deeply too. So Church and State, just tell people where they can find the podcast real quick, and why did you name it that?
Sure. Yeah. The website is churchandstate.media, but you can find us pretty much everywhere. We're even back on YouTube. I got banned because I wouldn't shut up about the vaccine. Had about 100,000 followers, and they killed that. That kind of hurt a little bit, but we're trying to rebuild that. But yeah, go there, and if you fill out that form where you'll get our newsletter, I also personally call every single person who fills that out. So if you want an opportunity to talk with me, I'll call you right there. The reason for the name of the show, initially going back to my city council days, which was it was about a decade ago, actually. And I did those two things that you were talking about. I fought against the vaccine mandate back in 2016. So before it was cool, I was fighting against the vaccine mandate. And then our attorney general, who now unfortunately in Washington State is our governor, he said he was going to ban assault weapons. And I like to use the air quotes, assault weapons, and high capacity magazines. And so my response was to try to turn our city into a Second Amendment sanctuary city. It was kind of tongue-in-cheek. It was during the whole sanctuary cities that the left was throwing around, so I was having a little bit of fun with it. Regardless, the entire city council was made up of Republicans, and it didn't pass. They thought I was a little bit out there. Ultimately, the Republican Party ran somebody against me, and I lost my seat. And about a week later, I got an opportunity to start a show. And so I started it with my best friend at the time. He was a pastor. I'm a politician. church and state. Ultimately, that gentleman had to leave. He went into missions. He's still a great friend of mine, but I've just kept the name because these are the two issues that we have to be talking about, right? They tell you at every dinner conversation, never bring up politics and religion if you want the conversation to go well. That's exactly what we should be talking about.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, man. I put a little passage in the first part of my book about a conversation I had with one of my dad's sisters, who is elderly now. That I had at a one of those things you go to after a funeral, and everybody's eating and everything. And I had heard she was mad at me, so I sat down next to her, and she looked at me and said, "Robbie, I am not very happy with you supporting that man." You know who she's talking about. But after I spent 10 minutes talking with her, she said, "All right, I get it. You have my confidence back." But it was because we were sitting at dinner and having a polite conversation about it. You're exactly right. That's where it needs to be.
We have to go back to that engagement with people that we've been told by the media, by a lot of these talking heads, that there are our fundamental enemies. And I remind people of this on the show all the time. Look, your Democrat neighbor, they're not your enemy. Pretty much they want the same things you do. They're not these rabid, hardcore leftists that are out in the streets. I'm in Washington State. We're dealing with a lot of Antifa, right? They're not, your neighbor isn't that person typically. Go and have that conversation. See what you can agree on. I mean, myself, I'm a libertarian. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. So I'm used to having these types of conversations with people because I'm an outlier.
That's exactly why I wanted to have you on, but really, you're not an outlier. It's called Americanism. That's what I call it. A friend of mine wrote a whole book about it before he passed away and introduced me to it. And that's what Americanism is. We're not partisan. We're not Republican or Democrat. We look at what's laid out in the Declaration of Independence that resulted in that Constitution eventually by a lot of the smart people that wrote the Declaration and were involved in that. And we see it for what it is. It's not a political party. It is an American concept that's not ideological. It is religious in the sense that we believe, at least I do anyway, believe that we did have divine providence that led to that outcome of everything from 1770s up to the end of the War for Independence and the American Revolution and everything, and the successes of that, and then to the Constitution itself. But none of that is partisan. It's all American.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And you have to understand that this divisiveness is engineered, and they've been doing it for a very long time. They've separated us over color, right? You're black, I'm white. We're not going to get along. We're different over the sexes, over wages. I mean, they keep doing this to us. And why do they do that? Because they want a separation here, right? But they don't want us to focus on the top, because the reality is there's an elite group of individuals who are not American, who do not love this country. Maybe they reside in America, but they want globalism. They want an oligarchy is basically what they want to have in the United States. And you can see it plainly with their actions and the legislation that they're able to pass. But that's the true enemy. They want to keep us divided over these trivial things.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I supported J.D. Vance when he was running for Senate, even in the Republican primary in Ohio, was because of his stance against globalism. Even though he had come out of the venture capital world, he saw globalism for what it was, which was destroying our manufacturing base. He lived right there in the Rust Belt in Ohio. He saw it. He grew up in it, in the destruction of all those great jobs. But not just that, the capability that globalism has destroyed, both from a manufacturing perspective, from an economic perspective that transcends even our manufacturing base, and the ability for Americans to even get jobs. I mean, the H-1B program is a globalist program. I ran into a friend of mine that works for an insurance company, and she said, "Yeah, the president of our country is an H-1B visa." Why?
Yeah,
why are we doing that to ourselves?
It's all part of the destabilization process, and we were warned about this a long time ago. But this is part of the process to bring down America, and part of it is bringing in all of these immigrants who, honestly, they look at work a lot differently than Americans, right? We've been westernized. We've come to believe that we don't have to work our tails off. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. In fact, it shouldn't be the case. But a lot of these people, they're willing to work harder than you for less wages than you. And then you bring in these cultures who don't have this idea of fundamental natural rights. They don't believe naturally in freedom. In fact, most of them, if you examine who's being brought into the country, most of them have lived under tyranny throughout their lives, or at least their ancestors has been passed down over and over and over again. So they're used to being told what to do. They're used to being used and not asking questions. They bring all that in, and then you bring in the different religions as well. It's a recipe for disaster, and America has just opened the borders to that.
Yeah, and we see it happening. It's almost like I characterize it as it's watching a train wreck in progress in very slow motion. And everybody asks me, that's why my book's titled what it is. Everybody asks me, well, what can I individually do about that? Because as Americans, inherently, even the immigrants that become American citizens that get it, they believe that in the power of doing something as a citizen and getting things done about an issue. Well, we got to take a hard break here, Caleb. When we come back, we'll see a cold open video about flock cameras. Now, this is a discussion I didn't get to have with you the other day. I want to have this discussion now because I want to get your thoughts on it as somebody that comes from a more libertarian perspective, but also about the issue itself and how hardcore it is when you think about this and tyranny, the word tyranny and control and the state. We'll be right back with Caleb Collier of Church and State. Go subscribe to his podcast.
At a certain age, you stop chasing younger. You start protecting what helps you feel steady, strong, and well. Your body's collagen matters. It supports the structure of your skin, joints, and connective tissue. But as the years go by, your body needs more support from the inside. That's where Bella Grace Elixir comes in. Bella Grace Elixir combines Verisol collagen, the world's most clinically proven collagen, with Asteryl astaxanthin and cat's claw in a proprietary blend designed to help support the processes that reconstruct collagen, while also offering antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. And this isn't just for women. It's for men and women who want to age with more confidence, more care, and a daily wellness routine that supports the body from within. One simple elixir, thoughtfully formulated for whole body wellness. Take care of the body that has carried you this far. Order Bella Grace Elixir today at melissahousebg.com.
Governor, what is your response to concerns surrounding flock cameras and the Utah Civic Compact's message encouraging lawmakers to address out-of-state agencies making a large amount of requests to Utah flock cameras with no systems to verify if those searches adhere to Utah law?
Yeah, deeply troubled and share those same concerns. There's been stories now coming from agencies across the United States where law enforcement individuals have accessed those cameras for personal reasons, for reasons outside of the law enforcement chain. I think Americans should be deeply concerned about that. The state of Utah has been in the forefront of really trying to put guardrails around the use of those types of technologies to protect citizens' privacy, that they can only be used in the most extreme circumstances to protect life and safety. And I don't think we should say, hey, just trust us. I don't think that should be the response at all. We have a Utah Privacy Board and a statewide board and a privacy commission. And I've asked them to do a review of all of our rules and regulations around these cameras, especially how they're being used with local agencies to make sure they are not being abused, to make sure that the public understands how and when they can be used, and if there are abuses taking place, that people are held accountable.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Wednesday, and we're talking rights, liberty, and what it means to really believe in what founded America, what's supposed to be our underpinning. And the man you just heard there was the Republican governor of Utah. And my guest today is Caleb Collier, who is a Marine Corps veteran, a former city councilman for Spokane Valley, one of the originators of the phrase Second Amendment sanctuary city, I might add, which is fantastic. I thought it was a wonderful idea when you guys came up with that. Caleb is the host of the show Church and State. Caleb, we wanted to talk about flock cameras, but decided not to get too deep into it when I made an appearance on your show. But look, when I hear that, and I could have picked any number of videos. There's one out today of the CEO of the company saying that Americans are just going to have to suck it up and accept 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 surveillance, and just forget about the Fourth Amendment and have warrantless surveillance and searches and seizures whenever we want. You got to be kidding me. Who are these people?
Yeah, they're elitist. I mean, his statement right there shows you his mentality. He has an elitist mentality. This is a subject that makes me physically angry. We did not sign up to live under 1984. This is Orwellian to its roots, and we got to do something about this. And flock cameras. People are talking a lot about flock cameras. Look, flock cameras are just the first step. And in fact, they're already improving upon these flock cameras. There's new updates to them. It's not just that they're reading your license plate anymore. Now they're harvesting all of your data. So when you drive by, they're picking up your cell phone. They're picking up your laptop. They're taking the chip in your pet that you put in there, the tire pressure sensors in your car. It's harvesting all of that data and using it against you. We should, as Americans, this should be a moment where we rise up and we say, no, we are not living under this, and we are taking this system out because it's rotten to its core. And I'm not one that advocates for, cutting these things down, engaging in vandalism. All right, that's not at all what I'm saying. But there are some certain things that you can do. I saw an individual who had a great plan, just spreading bird feed all around where these flock cameras are, because then the birds are going to flock to it. Forgive the pun there. And their waste, to put it mildly, will cover the cameras, cover the sensors. I think that's a great idea. But there's also other solutions out there as well. I also work for a company called Mark37.com. We sell ghost phones and ghost laptops. All right, we sell phones that are using Graphene OS as the operating system, and computers that are using Linux as their operating system. This means that I have a phone that doesn't spy on me, that they can't harvest that data off of that. So there are solutions. They're cheap. They're affordable. But Americans just need to get out of the matrix of, well, I love my iPhone because it works so great. You're trading your privacy for convenience.
Yeah, one of the jobs that I've held was as the commander of Kirtland Air Force Base before I retired from the military. I had a law enforcement and security force of 630 men and women. I would have been very pleased to have a flock system on that installation. It was 53,000 acres, and I was constantly, the thing that kept me up at night was people penetrating the perimeter that were our adversaries, like spies, terrorists, those kind of things. But when I look outside the fence line, that's where that kind of authority stopped. I mean, the rules were that you don't go outside the fence line unless you're working with local law enforcement, local political leadership, and they've requested you do it, do law enforcement type activity and help them, assist them. Unless there's one thing, and that was hot pursuit of nuclear weapons. I mean, you're a base commander in the U.S. military. That's the only thing you can go hot pursuit after, is that, at least back in those days, which wasn't too long ago, and should be that way. There's a big difference between being able to command the entire country as a military installation versus a civilian society that believes in freedom. It's crazy.
It truly is, and people are waking up to this. There is some opposition to the flock cameras and the data centers, but unfortunately, they steer this conversation in the direction that they want. And the reality is data centers have been a part of our history, our most recent history, for quite some time. We're just now getting upset, and we're getting upset specifically about these massive AI data centers. But if they were just operating as a tool, that would be another conversation entirely. The reality is they're tracking everything that you're doing. They're storing everything that you're doing. And I have bad news for you, ladies and gentlemen. This thing in my hand, this cell phone, that's a data center. And you carry it in your pocket every single day. Are you upset about that enough to do something about it?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. The reason I chose the Utah governor clip there is because a friend of mine used to be one of the congressmen there, Chris Stewart. We flew together in B-1s. And Chris was a big advocate for one of the first large data centers in America, and they got it built in Utah. But the important thing is this was a long time ago, more than 10 years ago, if I remember correctly. And the debate that we were bringing up was the reason it was being created was because the law was being passed at the federal level that said that the metadata from all the phones and everything could be collected. You remember that big debate and everything?
I do.
Well, that data center was built out in Utah. That's why I picked the governor of Utah's clip to do that, to have this discussion. The fact that data centers are here already shouldn't really surprise anybody. But the AI data centers are taking a lot more power, taking a lot more water or liquid cooling, and those kind of things. Are you hearing from folks about the legitimate concerns? And here are mine. I'll just lay mine out. Mine are that if this data center is so large that it's going to impact the ratepayers in the utility system, and I worked in the utility business for a little bit after I left the Air Force, then the builders and owners of the data center need to provide their own power. And I would prefer small modular reactors, nuclear or micro reactors for nuclear power, so they could give power back to the grid, by the way, and reduce rates even more. But also they have to provide their own water, and they're responsible for any cleanup, security, and the taxpayers shouldn't have to bear that burden. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, I am hearing similar things. And yes, there's an environmental factor here as well. And once again, going back to what I was talking about in the beginning of the show, that intentional divide, right? As conservatives, Republicans, we've been told, the environmentalists, those are the enemy. But the reality is some of their concerns are in fact valid. And as Christians, we're supposed to be good stewards of this earth that God created for us. And so, yeah, when you're talking to some of these people, these neighbors that unfortunately have had these massive data centers built right in their backyards, their water's unusable. It's like a nasty, toxic sludge that's coming back out of this. The power that they're bringing in, yeah, if they were providing their own, once again, different conversation. But that's not really happening, is it? The power companies, because there's an allure there, right? The dollar. Hey, who's going to pay better? The neighbor in the residential home or this massive data center? Who's going to pay the prices better? And they can raise them as well. Of course, they're going to put an emphasis on these data centers. So there's a lot of issues that people are getting really angry about. My primary concern is going to be focused around that privacy, because I do believe that the Fourth Amendment matters, that we are supposed to be secure in our persons and our papers. And as it currently stands, our persons, our papers, all of that information is in our cell phones, and they're harvesting all of that up. I also, when I talk about this subject, I bring up the Third Amendment. Why? Because nobody ever talks about the Third Amendment, right? It doesn't really exist in the modern sense. But it was important to our founding fathers because they didn't want British troops to be able to kick down the door and say, I'm staying in this house tonight. Well, welcome to the new soldier, ladies and gentlemen. It's right here. It's rectangular shaped, and you carry it in your pocket.
That's a great point. I have not heard anybody talk about it that way. So you've been a city councilman. I mean, that's, I think, the most important political office for somebody to hold, that and mayor in the United States of America, to be honest with you, because that's where the rubber meets the road, literally, but it's also where the ideas about what should be done when we face issues like this That's why I encourage people, get involved at the city council level or school board level if you're going to get involved. So what do you hear as proposed solutions that are doable so that we can be safe and secure in our papers and effects and not have the soldier occupying our house at will?
Yeah, and I 100% agree with what you just said. We have got to get people involved in the local level. General Michael Flynn talks about this all the time. Get involved at the local level. But if you do, you're going to have to watch the bureaucracy, because the bureaucracy is everywhere. And I figured this out pretty early on in my tenure as a city council member. And I'll give you an example. It's a really silly one, but it's a great example. They decide that they want to put a roundabout at a street corner. Okay. Now, a lot of people have strong opinions about roundabouts, and the crowd would flood in there, and you'd be like, wow, the city council meeting's full because people have strong opinions about a roundabout. I personally like them when they're used properly, when people don't stop and just sit there. They work great, okay, if you do it properly. But what the city council bureaucracy would do, what the employees of the city would do, is they'd present you with three options, and they would say, hey, we can do A, B, or C. Now, these people would like option A the best, but they still win regardless, even if the city council chooses option C. And nobody on the city council thought to ask, wait a minute, why is it only these three options? Why can't we look at some other way? And that's the responsibility of the politician, the person who represents the people, to go beyond what's being presented to them, to look at different options. And this is why it's so important to get somebody that's not afraid. Look, I served one term and I was out because I took bold stands. But you know what? I'm proud of my time on the city council because I did push back. So that's who you need to be looking for. And you cannot have a politician at that local level when we're addressing something like these AI data centers or flock cameras that's just willing to compromise. They have to have a strong constitution. They have to understand our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, our Declaration of Independence, that we are, as Americans, supposed to live free. And so when it comes to this, regardless if the campaign funds dry up, it doesn't matter. You're doing the right thing. And you got to remember, too, as Christians, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter what the world says about you. It doesn't matter if the world drags up past mistakes and sins. You are doing the right thing. Why? Because the judge of all is looking down, and he's going to put a record of your actions. So stand firm, regardless of the consequences from the world.
That's a great point. People forget that, don't they? That everything here is temporary. And the big judge in the sky. Well, we got to take another hard break, man. When we come back, I want to ask you about the flock issue in relation to siding with people we wouldn't normally side with, teaming up with them, because I found something out in my research about flock cameras a couple of weeks ago. And then we'll see a clip about affordability and the globalism issue. And I think affordability for young men and women today is the key issue. And I want to get your thoughts on that as somebody who's served in the military and has served in the political life and is now speaking up and trying to help people understand what they can do. We'll be right back with Caleb Collier of Church and State.
Take a look at the water you just poured. It looks clean. It tastes fine. But what's really in it? Lead, fluoride, arsenic, chlorine, pesticides, PFAS forever chemicals, pharmaceutical residues, and bacteria. Every single day, these toxins flow straight from your tap into your glass, into your family. It's time for Sentry H2O from Worldview Water. Sentry H2O is the ultimate water treatment technology, designed to remove harmful toxins, balance your water's pH, and enrich it with essential minerals like calcium and magnesium, the way nature intended. From commercial-scale systems to whole-house filtration to crisp, delicious drinking water right at your kitchen sink and shower, Sentry H2O delivers cleaner, healthier water everywhere you need it. No plumber, no tools, no plumbing knowledge required. Perfect for homes, apartments, rentals, RVs, refrigerators, and more. Because everyone deserves access to clean, healthy water. Visit worldviewwater.net. That's worldviewwater.net.
But to me, it's fundamentally about the dignity of the human person. The economy is a tool to service the dignity of the human person. If a set of economic policies make it easier for a person to raise a family, to earn a living wage, to give back to their community, to maybe go to church on Sunday, or to actually spend some leisure time building the kind of life that matters, like that is the sort of thing that we want to be supportive of. Now, obviously, to do those things, you do need economic development.
Yeah.
But if you turn economic development into a sort of idol, then you end up sacrificing a lot of the things that matter most. And I do think that, for our friends who are sort of on the more laissez-faire side of the American right, in hindsight, part of why Milton Friedman's ideas made more sense in the 1980s is because they were being advocated in a country that still had a very rich and powerful institutional Christianity. And so, like, being laissez-faire in a world where there are Christian guardrails on everything is a much different proposition than being laissez-faire in a world where globalized liberalism has become the sort of status quo of American elites.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Wednesday, and we're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And my guest is Marine Corps veteran and host of the Church and State podcast and former city councilman Caleb Collier. And Caleb, during that last segment, we talked about working with those that a little bit about working with those that we might have seen as our enemy at some point. And one of the things I discovered in my flock research here locally in my town, because I discovered a camera about 100 yards down the street from me a couple of weeks ago, is that the group, the indivisible groups, which I see as far left wing, are doing a lot of organizing on coming out against the flock camera issue. And that man right there, J.D. Vance, he's in this globalism discussion and discussion about affordability. He's being accused of siding with the other side because he's done things like work with Elizabeth Warren on important economic bills that focused at helping the young men and women of this and the previous generation be able to live in a country that they can afford and be as prosperous as my parents or I.
Yeah, I love that you bring up working with the other side. I recently got asked to speak at a protest for the building of an AI data center here in Spokane, Washington. And so I said yes, and I get up there, and they've got the podium and everything, and the event hadn't started yet, and so all these different speakers were kind of talking with each other. And this long-haired gentleman, big beard, he comes walking up to me, he says, where do you align politically? And so I tell him I'm a Christian libertarian, and he goes, I'm Antifa. And I was like, oh. And he says, but I'm the good Antifa. I hated Joe Biden and I hate Donald Trump. And I was like, well, I didn't like Joe Biden and I have some issues with Donald Trump. So, okay. And you know what? We had a good conversation. We both spoke. I agreed with a lot of what he said. He agreed with a lot of what I said. So once again, that division, the intentional division, we can come together. We can come together as a community to say, this isn't something that we want. Left, right, center, I don't care. We don't agree on a massive data center that's going to harm our environment, that's going to have privacy issues, and I hope to see more of this occurring.
Yeah, and let's be clear. I don't think you or I know I'm not talking about siding with the leftist Democrats on a leftist Democrat Marxist communist policy. I'm talking about on an issue that's important to Americans, like the Fourth Amendment and the Third Amendment. I mean, that's important to every American, or should be.
It should be. I would agree with you. Yeah, all of these rights should be important to us because they're God-given, and the government should have no capability of taking them away.
Yeah, the kind of compromise where you compromise and you take a Marxist aspect to a bill, that's not the compromise the teamwork we're talking about. So J.D. Vance, he's getting attacked, and I wanted to get your take on this because there's this term called post-liberalism that is being used against him. Look, I believe in post-globalism in America is what I believe in. I haven't heard that term thrown around at all, but I got to thinking about this post-liberalism in these attacks that I'm seeing on Vance, which are setting up for, the 2028 presidential run and all that stuff. I get all that. But the discussion is coming up because of the affordability issue. in age, I think you're probably a lot closer to those generations than I am, although I have children in those generations and I talk to them about it. What are you hearing from an affordability perspective on the types of policies these young men and women are looking for? I mean, the party in power right now of all three branches of federal government is the Republican Party. So from a Republican Party perspective, what kind of policies are they looking for?
Yeah, the younger generation is a really interesting one, and I'm 48, so I'm looking towards the generation coming up, the 20-year-olds that are really frustrated by what's going on economically in this country, and they're feeling disillusioned with the political systems, and if we can use that to actually bring about positive change, then that would be a positive thing. That'd be a good thing for us. But what you're seeing currently within the Democrats is a war between the establishment and the DSA. And a lot of the younger generations are really starting to embrace this idea of socialism as a great equalizer. Now, obviously, you and I would think that's the wrong path. And that's going to lead to a path of, you might all have the exact same things, but you're going to be poverty stricken. You're going to live in government housing where the color is concrete. That's all you get to see. Yes,
together.
Exactly. Yeah. Within the Republican circles, you are seeing there's some disillusionment. Obviously, there had been with the establishment Republican Party. Then MAGA came around, but you are starting to see a lot of people that are disillusioned with MAGA, and it's stemming from a few things. Number one, the Epstein files. We're frustrated by this. We got lied to. We were told that this was going to come out, that these individuals at high levels who were raping, torturing, murdering, maybe even cannibalizing some of these kids on some of these locations, that was going to be revealed and we were going to see justice, and it didn't occur. We're seeing ourselves engaged again in another foreign war, which is very frustrating. Obviously, as a libertarian, I'm really tired of endless wars, so there's a frustration there. And then $40 trillion in debt as a country. This is ridiculous. This is ludicrous. And it's you can't throw it all on Trump. You can't throw it all on Biden. It's presidents down the line. You can go considerably back in our history and see president after president that has contributed to this national debt that we'll never be able to pay off. And so when I look at the younger generations, I understand their frustration. They can't roll up their sleeves and work harder to be able to afford a home. That's not a possibility anymore. And in fact, it's kind of antiquated thinking to believe that. With what is coming at them right now, they may never be able to afford home ownership. So if we really want to see some changes, well, a great start. Let's end the Fed. Sorry to sound like Ron Paul, but if I'm accused of that, hey, thank you very much. But end the Fed. Let's kill this thing because it's not federal. It's not a banking system. It's designed to keep us enslaved. We got to kill that. We got to get back on a standard, some type of a standard. Right now we have a fiat currency that is only worth as much because people still have faith in it, but that's starting to die off. So I don't know if that's a gold standard, a silver standard, but there's got to be some kind of a standard to our money policies. And then start just hacking away at so many of these government institutions, these bureaucracies that make it absolutely impossible for Americans to live free.
Yeah, I mean that's you rattled off a lot of the things that I was hoping to see from the Trump administration. I'm still holding out that this conflict that we're in with the Iranians is ending and not an endless war policy, because I ran on ending endless war policy and voted for Trump the second time and the first time on ending endless war policy, like many of you guys did too. But that I brought up the H-1B visa issue. I mean, if you are bringing in hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of H-1Bs into this country, let's set aside the religious aspect to it, the cultural aspect to it, even the work ethic aspect to it. But it's preventing these young men and women from getting the jobs that these people are doing, and they're capable of doing those jobs. That's a problem. And Vance is out there advocating for using power to implement some of these policies. And I think Trump is got some things going on in that regard. He's up this fee on the H-1Bs and those kind of things. They are focused on bringing manufacturing back to the United States, which will result in long-term good jobs. But if Americans can't fill them because these people are able to bring in this cheap labor. That gets to the the immigration policy and the mass deportations. I think that the younger people that voted for Donald Trump are demanding the mass deportations, because there's a lot to that effect when it happens. Housing becomes more available. Prices will come down in housing. I mean, all of the things that they see that are out of their reach now can start coming back our way. And then you get to the currency thing. Look, I'm a Rand Paul guy. He's endorsed me when I ran for U.S. Senate. I wouldn't call myself an acolyte of his dad, Ron, but ending the Federal Reserve is a smart policy. And putting our currency back on some kind of standard is a smart policy, because wouldn't you agree that the reason we're able to get to $40 trillion in debt is because they can just make money? They just create it out of thin air.
Oh, exactly. And then they're stealing the purchasing power of our dollar through that inflation. And that's another reason why we can't afford anything. Our economy is in shambles. People are going to the grocery store, to the gas station, and they're frustrated. You bring up immigration, and it's a great point. I tend to believe that there's a real easy way to limit the amount of immigrants coming to this country, or even desire to come to this country. And that would be by killing off the entitlement programs. You kill off entitlement programs, guess what happens? People aren't going to be coming to this country expecting a handout. If they do come to this country, we're going to get more of the immigrants of old. You and I are both, we come from immigration, right? My parents were Italian, or my grandmother was Italian. I'm Irish. So yeah, they came here. They didn't get a handout. No, but you know what they got? You know what was attracted to them? It was freedom to be able to succeed or fail according to their own merits, by their own accord. That's how you fix immigration. You kill off the entitlement programs. I stand firm on that one.
Yeah. I'm Scotch Irish here, and the son of the guy that immigrated was a Revolutionary War soldier, but his dad had already was able to buy tracts of land in western North Carolina. But his payment for retirement, the Revolutionary War soldier, was a large tract of land. And it's not a handout; it's payment. For services rendered and those kind of things. We got to start thinking about that kind of stuff. While it may seem traditional in today's world, it's kind of innovative. And we need people like this, like Vance, in my opinion. I support JD. I've been open about that, and I'm going to support him if he runs for president too, because he's willing to take a look at policies and put the maybe set aside some of the things that on the Republican side that have led to this, like people that want amnesty for illegal and bringing in all the cheap labor for the corporations and all that. Those have got to be set aside and use the power of government once we're in to actually have a positive impact on Americans, for Americans. We'll be right back.
I would agree.
We'll be right back, Caleb. Got to take one last hard break.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed.
Response. Well, I'm glad to see that the Brady Center's worried, because that generally means that we're doing something in the right direction. But my response, Chanel, is actually what you tapped into. There are people across the country that feel this. They want back their Second Amendment rights. They want to hunt, but not even they want to hunt. They want to protect themselves. I had someone get in touch with us, said he feels threatened based on where he works and he wanted his protection. So it's wonderful, because the Second Amendment is fundamental. You know, you mentioned Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche was the Deputy Attorney General, my immediate boss, for the past year plus, and he was the one that was driving us. It took us a long time to get through all the regs and all the rules to get this thing set up. But it's great. I mean, look, it's an application process. So people come and say, just like your example, and say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm about. Why wouldn't we be saying, as to a fundamental right, the Second Amendment, it's not a second-class right. It's the Second Amendment, and it's fundamental. So it's going to be really great. I quibble with the pros that tell me how many people are going to come. There's 30 million people in this country that have a disability on their Second Amendment rights, meaning a conviction or other charge. Some portion of them, could be 25 million, are violent. They're not going to get it back because our process is going to weed that out. But 3, 4, 5 million people, I just tell people, when it comes to the Second Amendment, people are going to come. So we're working hard to get ready for what I think will be a flood of Americans who deserve the right, deserve the opportunity to request back this right.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on World YouTube and our X Spaces simulcast. And my guest today is Caleb Collier, a Marine Corps veteran, former city councilman from Spokane Valley, Washington, EMT, and host of the Church and State Show. And Caleb, you were one of the originators of the Second Amendment sanctuary city concept. So I can't let the show in without talking about headway, I think, in a positive direction that we may be making. And I'm nuancing it because, you know, even a guy that likes to see things in black and white, sometimes I gotta admit reality, and it's hard to change a bureaucracy, especially bureaucracies like the Department of Justice, the ATF, the Pentagon, and those kind of things. But that was Ed Martin there of this administration talking in recent days about how they were implementing a program to give people their Second Amendment rights back that may have been convicted of a crime. I think it's that situation. But we've also seen that the ATF's rulemaking, making rule into law seems to be dialing back. Harmeet Dillon has created a section inside the Attorney General's office specifically looking at protecting Second Amendment rights. It's almost as if the federal government is treating the Second Amendment right as a civil right again, which is what it is anyway.
Yeah, I'm going to be, I might disagree with you and perhaps that clip a little bit on this one. My personal belief on rights is I don't allow a government to grant me rights. Right. I take my rights because God gave those rights to me. And so when I see, this bureaucrat on the camera saying, hey, we're reestablishing the Second Amendment for certain people, I disagree with that premise just entirely. Like, we have a God-given right to have firearms, or swords back in the day or whatever it was. And the government doesn't have that ability to take those things away from us. And so I get really frustrated by this one because I think everybody should have a gun. People tend to look at movies and they see the Wild Wild West where there was a shootout basically on every corner. That wasn't the case. Okay, that's Hollywood. The reality when the West was being won, everybody had a gun, and there wasn't all these murders going on all over the place. Obviously, nobody would have gone over to the West if it was complete anarchy and you could get shot for pretty much anything. We need to get back to owning guns. The government has no right to have a registry of our guns. If they have guns, we can have guns. If they have weapons, we should be able to have those weapons as well. And I know that's a very libertarian principle, but I don't want a government, regardless of Republican, Democrat, whoever's in power, I don't want them being able to give edicts on who can own firearms.
No, I don't think that's a libertarian principle. That's an American principle. Look, I've run on a platform of restoring Second Amendment rights to convicted felons. I didn't caveat it the way we saw Ed Martin just do there. I don't know. I'm not inside in their policymaking arena and everything. I'm glad to see some turnaround, but I don't disagree with you on that. I think everybody ought to have guns, and I think that may be our military mindset, that background that we've had. Because while I'm sounding the warning about Sharia law and those kind of things, I'm also solid in the knowledge that there will be American fighters with arms to fight back if it ends up happening that way. I would prefer that not to happen, and I don't advocate for it. But that's what the whole reason behind the Second Amendment is: to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
And I love that domestic part.
And
right?
if we're bringing them in and making them domestics, and they're the enemies of our country, and they declare it every day. I mean, Abdul up in Michigan, Saeed, Abdul something Mohammed Saeed, folks, is the Democrat nominee up there. He's on video. It's very clear. I am obligated to follow Sharia law, which means that women don't have rights, children don't have rights, Christians don't have equal rights. Any other religion besides Islam don't have equal rights. That is a collision course with the American people, isn't it?
It certainly is, and the old expression, "an armed society is a polite society." That's exactly what it would be. If everybody's walking around armed, you're not going to see an increase in violence. Typically, people who own firearms are the best educated. They understand firearms. They're not out there waving them around, pointing at people. I mean, we're both military. If you had a soldier or something, pointing a rifle at people, I'm pretty sure they get scooped up and punished severely over something like that. It's not that, and the Second Amendment is not about hunting. He brought up hunting, right, or protection. It's not about that. It's the Founding Fathers wrote in the Second Amendment because they didn't want a tyrannical government to ever form on our soil again, and the people being armed was the check right there that we can replace the government, because going back to the Declaration of Independence, if a government ever becomes one that violates our liberties, then it's not only the right, but it's our duty to replace them with a government system that will honor our rights. So that's the purpose of the Second Amendment, and we need to remember that, and we need to start exercising it.
Yeah, and the phrase well-regulated militia is talking about the discipline that you just talked about, not necessarily that we learned in the military. Look, I started carrying firearms when I was less than 10 years old, and we were taught by our relatives in Tennessee very, very early the right way and the wrong way to use a firearm, because they're intended to kill, whether you're hunting, killing squirrels and rabbits or deer, or whether you're killing human beings because you're protecting your country, and I think that's what that phrase really means. And then you nailed it right there, that the people are that militia. I think we need to get back to that too, don't you? Because we passed several laws over the last 250 years that have mitigated really the people as the militia, the check that we all know is supposed to be there on tyrannical government. And replaced it with like the National Guard, active duty military, those kind of things, and kind of made the word militia a bad word. I've always disagreed with doing that. How can we do that?
I agree 100% with you. We need to go back to militias. I'm going to say something that's going to anger my Army veteran friends, but the Founding Fathers did not like a standing army. They wanted, as you just said, a well-regulated militia, which was all of us. If you read the Constitution, there's a Department of the Navy, and as a Marine, I feel really good about that, right? So we're okay here. But the standing army, we weren't supposed to have. We were supposed to have a well-regulated militia that at a moment's notice could go and defend American interests. But the problem with having a standing army is eventually you're going to look to use it. And I think we've been doing that a lot.
Yeah, mostly outside of the United States, but at some point it may be turned against us if things go the wrong way. I think that's why it's very important for us as citizens to work as hard as we can to get our government back to that constitutional government that it was intended to, and away from this behemoth. And it comes down to money, doesn't it? It comes down to funding. Well, we got one question in the live audience. Let's take that before we get to the end of the show. Go ahead, Shell. Very quick question.
We have Liz, sir.
Semper Fi, sir. I'm also a Marine, and I wanted to know: are you on X or Facebook or anything that we can follow you and get all your information and things that you put out there?
Yeah, Semper Fi to you as well. It's always great to talk to a fellow Marine. We're a rare breed. Americans love us. We look good in our dress blues. I'll say that. But yeah, you can follow me on X at One Church and State. You can find me on Facebook, Church and State 1776. I think Instagram's the same one. Pretty much I'm all over social medias. If you go to churchandstate.media, there's a drop down where it has every link to where you can follow us, all the different social medias.
Yeah, fantastic. I appreciate it, Caleb. Thank you so much for coming on. I guess I wanted to give you a couple minutes to talk to folks about if they're considering getting active or running for city council or school board. What are the things that you learned in your experience doing that, and how did you use your background of being a Marine Corps veteran and an EMT and those kinds of things?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Fundamentally, I hate bullies. I hated them when I was a kid, and I hate them now. And unfortunately, a lot of those bullies that would take your lunch money as a kid are now working in government. So be aware of that. That's who you're fighting. That's who you're coming up against. If you decide to take the plunge, start getting involved. And number one, you are not going to walk in there as an idealist and get elected to really anything. That's almost impossible. Even at the local level, there are some hoops that you got to jump through. There's some games that you got to play. So you got to start getting involved. Get involved with your local Republican Party. And just so you know, that's going to be a fight. There's going to be establishment. There's going to be moderates. There's going to be more people on the liberty side. Find the people that are on the liberty side of things and start partnering with them. Start working on things together. Go, and I guarantee you every single city has events that you can go and be a part of, that you can volunteer for. There's groups like the John Birch Society that's going to have chapter meetings all over this country. There's TPUSA chapters that you can go and meet and find like-minded individuals. So go and find those organizations and start partnering with them. Start making your name be known, and then start talking with people. Hey, I'd like to do something like this. I'd like to run for city council. I'd like to get on the school board. You got to get some support, because even if the money is against you, even if the establishment and all that they bring to the table is opposed to you, you get enough of a grassroots movement. You get enough people that are willing to go knock on doors. That's one of the biggest things that you need to be doing if you're running for political office, is get a big base of people that'll hand out your flyers, knock on doors, talk to people. You can win. And then at that point, ladies and gentlemen, look, you have a standard. You have a true north. Don't deviate from that. Okay? Even if you're a one-term politician like me, you're going to make your mark. You're going to make a difference.
Yeah, you absolutely are. And the real war is going to be won at the local and state level, in my opinion. While I've run for federal office, I've also run for local and state office. And I'm active in my Republican Party on the executive committee here in Harrison County. And you're absolutely right, Caleb. I'm glad you said that. There's going to be all kinds of people in there. Find the people that you can ally with on the big things, and that can set you up for success. Set the team up. Thanks, my friend. I appreciate it. Loved having you on. Hope to do it again sometime, and keep up the fight.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure being on.
God bless you. All right, folks. So go subscribe to him at Church and State on YouTube. He got creamed by the YouTube Nazis like a lot of the rest of us did. So make sure you go subscribe to him and take care of him. Tomorrow, Mark Scaringi is my guest, another great host of a great show. First time guest with us tomorrow. I'm excited to get to interview Mark. We'll see you then on Truth Thursday.
You've heard of glutathione, the body's master antioxidant. It fights free radicals, boosts your immune system, and powers every cell in your body. But here's the problem. Traditional IV glutathione treatments, they're expensive, time-consuming, and they break down in your body in just 90 minutes. That means repeat visits, repeat needles, and repeat bills. There's a better way. It's called NutraSwish. NutraSwish uses hydrostat delivery, micro-sized glutathione particles your body absorbs more efficiently with a sustained release that keeps antioxidant protection working hour after hour.